A year and a half ago, I was contacted by the United States Army. And I was asked to travel to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and speak to 100 men and women who were about to be deployed to Afghanistan. And when the chief called, this is what he asked. Mr. Vitale, I want you to motivate them. Yes, sir. I'll never forget when I put down that phone and I thought, motivate them to be optimistic, to endure. So my wife and I, we traveled to Fort Campbell, and I walked into a room a little smaller than this room tonight, and I stood on the back wall, and the chief was briefing his men and women, and I'll never forget when he concluded his remarks, he said, we have asked a guest speaker to join us this morning, and I would suggest that you pay attention. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Right then I felt like a rock star, okay? I really did. So I'll never forget, I walked down or up this aisle and I came onto a makeshift stage. And when I made it to the stage and I turned around, I went completely blank. Nothing. I just stood there. I saw 100 men and women in the same uniform, seated in this room with the same American flag sewn on the same shoulder. And I froze. There was a soldier on the second row. He leans up, he goes, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm thinking, that's what I'm supposed to tell you. So finally I got these words out. Thank you for what you do, so in turn, I can do what I do. So then the train leaves the station, and for an hour and a half I had the privilege to speak. Motivate them? I saw optimism, I saw fear. I saw confusion, I saw excitement. I saw tears. Motivate them? You know what I learned that day? That a simple thank you goes a long way. When we talk about optimism, it's an attitude. When you come to this region of the state, when you come to the Rogers-Lowell area, it's an attitude. It's a swagger. It's a belief. And it's consistent. Let me say one thing about education, if you don't mind, because this is personal to me. I grew up in Russellville, and my mother is a retired school teacher. My father was heavily involved in tourism, and he's a retired social worker. For many years growing up, I was tutored for a speech impediment. I do not hear vowel sounds in words. So I was out in the hallway most days with tutors. And they had flashcards that they would flash in front of me, and they would ask me to sound out the letters and the words and the vowel sounds into a tape recorder. When the bell would ring, I'd have buddies come and kick my chair, and they'd point at me. And they'd say a few things. My tutors would say this, Paul, you have two choices. You can either listen to them, or you can listen to me. Ironically, recently I was down in southeast Arkansas visiting a prison where I was a guest speaker. And I bumped into one of the young men who used to kick my chair. I got to go home that evening, and unfortunately he was already at home. Education's a big deal. And having the chance to visit with so many of you this evening prior to this beautiful event, you talk about the I generation and the next generation of leaders and the urgency of leadership. I will say one thing about being optimistic. If we're not the individuals in the trenches setting the tone for leadership and for development, who's going to do it for us? And when I think about education, for every educator here this evening, without those tutors, without those teachers, without those coaches, without those librarians, I would never have the privilege to stand and speak for a living